Hello and welcome to the Week 12 preview episode of the Jefferson Madrigs Fantasy Podcast, the pod on a mission to normalise 8-team leagues. No H again, so it's just me and Ian holding the fort. All of the messages I sent out to try and get celeb guests in have been ignored. So it's just me and you, Ian. Again, the duo dream team. How are you?
I'm good, mate. Yeah, you?
Yeah, all good. Before we get cracking this week, I'm going to change things up a little bit. I'm going to give us a bit of a shout out in terms of follows. So if you're not already doing that, you're listening to the pod or you're watching the pod on YouTube, we'd appreciate it if you follow us on socials at JMD Pod and at JMD Podcast on TikTok. Like and subscribe there, as it says on the bottom of the screen for those watching on YouTube. We'd really appreciate the follows as we continue to try and build this podcast up. It's week 12, which is also known as like Buy-mageddon, because there's 6 teams on a buy, and from a fantasy point of view, I didn't realize I'd obviously sort of looked at this at the beginning of the season, but I put it to the back of my mind because I am really not looking forward to this week now when I've noticed how many players are missing.
Yeah, I didn't realize how many leagues I actually had Joe Burrow in until this week when these crunch time as well. Like these are the weeks where you need those wins to try sneaking in the back door of the playoffs. And when you got a week 5 bye, it doesn't really impact your season, does it? Or you don't think it does. But when it gets to week 12 and you're looking at your leagues and you one win or one loss away from the playoffs, and it's you're looking at like no Alvin Kamara is a big one for me as well, because you know how much I love that guy.
Well, I think that's it. It's like you look at it and go, 6 teams on a bye, but it's not just 6 teams. It's Falcons. I mean, they've got wide receivers, running back, even quarterback that people have got. Bills have obviously stacked with Josh Allen. Bengals are now stacked with players. You mentioned Kamara. Even the Jets, as bad as they've been, Garrett Wilson's putting up points. Adams isn't doing a bad job. Breece Hall scored well this weekend. It's like there's a lot of points missing. I'm playing H in 2 of our main leagues this week. And we know how much H loves Josh Allen and has him in many leagues. And I looked at, he's got him in both. And I was like, brilliant. And then I looked at my side of the matchup and I was like, oh, man, this might not go as well as I was hoping. I thought I was catching him at a good time, but it might be the other way around. But before we get to talking fantasy and the last 3 weeks of the regular season, let's focus a little bit on the overall situation and outlook in the NFL. I feel like we start with your Bengals every week, but we're going to do it again. That was a good game on Sunday night. I only caught the highlights, but what a game that was.
Yeah. I mean, I was so annoyed. It's a game. We lost it in the first half. It's just I go on every week about how bad our D is, and it's terrible. Cam Taylor-Britt finally got sat. They brought Josh Newton, and Josh Newton actually looked decent for the second half. But then DJ Turner's broken his collarbone, which is awful news for us because he was looking decent. But that game was lost in the first half with 2 red zone visits, with 2 awful series of plays called in by Zach Taylor. And it's not the first time this season I've gone in on Zach Taylor. We need to take the play calling off him, because it's absolutely ridiculous the things he's doing in the red zone. Like, why can't we 2nd and goal? Why can't we just run it?
I think, well, with Chase Brown playing so well, I think you should just be running it.
Why can't we just run one up the middle on 2nd and goal?
Ridiculous.
It's so annoying.
Is that it? Is hope all over for you, or do you still think you can make the playoffs?
Well, there's still a chance. I saw someone on Twitter figure it out that we can actually lose one more game and still make the playoffs. But I had
a quick look at it. You've got to beat the Steelers next week.
Which we will.
And that was the summary of what I came up with, because after the Steelers, you've got 4 straight weeks where you can easily put 4 straight wins together. So obviously you're on bye this week. If you can beat the Steelers, and then you've got 4 games after that could potentially get you to 9-8. That'd be 9-7 going into the final week of the season, where I think you've got the Steelers again. So I think it's doable, and I think it's doable because the AFC is a mess. There are basically there are 6 teams who look like they're going to make the playoffs. There are another 5 or 6 teams that I've just got absolutely no hope whatsoever. And then there's 3 of you: Broncos, Dolphins, and Bengals, vying for that 7th place. And
Yeah.
you might throw the Colts in there, but I'm convinced we'll drop away. We just don't have enough. So it's the and I don't think the Dolphins, when you look at their schedule, I don't think the Dolphins will do it either. So there's only the Broncos, I think, who can stop you getting into the playoffs.
Yeah, well, we love doing things the hard way anyway, don't we? Like we start the season 0-2 or 1-3, whatever you want to do by week 4. Like we always start with horrendously and then skin of our teeth. And even if we do make the playoffs, I'm not confident. Like Zach Taylor said this week, like we're not going to make any wholesale changes during the bye week. I was like, well, we're 4-7. Why would we? Why would we make any wholesale changes? It's ridiculous. You might be the most delusional man in football.
Yeah, it's just it might. I mean, it'd be interesting to see how you finish the season, but he might have run his time at the Bengals. Might be time for a change.
Yeah, I saw someone saying that Mike Vrabel's being lined up for it.
Yeah. Well, as long as you got a good offensive coordinator in there with him, that could work.
Well, I mean, I don't mind Zach Taylor staying on. Just take the play calling out of his hands.
Yeah.
Just let him be a head coach, the defensive coordinator call the plays. Let Dan Pitcher do it.
The one thing that would worry me watching the games, as I know you do, is if you do lose a couple of the next few, T. Higgins' hamstring's definitely going to come back and bother him again. as soon as the playoffs are off, that's it. He's out of there. And I would also be worried about Jamar Chase as well, because he didn't get a contract at the beginning of the season. So the slightest knock, and he's gonna be. I'll take the game off as well. So the last few games could be grim watching.
Well, I don't even think he'll come to the players, with injuries. I think if the playoffs are dead, why would we bother? Why would we play Joe Burrow? Why would we risk him? Why would we risk Jamar Chase? Run T. Higgins to the ground. Don't care about that. Let our own, like Orlando Brown, rest him up. Trent Brown's done for the season anyway. BJ Hill, rest him. Trey Hendrickson, rest him. We don't want any of them getting injuries for next season, so just rest them all. I don't think it'd be up to the players. I think it'd be a management decision.
They don't tend to do that. It'll be interesting to see. Just quickly on the Jets, you see Joe Douglas has gone.
Yeah.
With the Jets.
Yeah. Well, he only had a year left on his contract anyway, didn't he? But they're doing a full rebuild, aren't they, the Jets?
It feels a bit like, well, I mean, they have to get rid of Rodgers if they're doing a full rebuild. It feels a little bit like we'll sack someone, and then when in 3 weeks' time, when it's still not going well, we'll sack somebody else, and then they'll just keep changing it. But I mean, I don't know how they didn't beat us at the weekend, because we're not very good either. But yeah, they're a mess, and Aaron Rodgers is a big part of
that. No, he is, and he honestly looks like he doesn't care anymore. Like he'll throw a bad pass, or someone will drop a ball, and he's like mentally he's checked out.
Yeah, they're not with it. On the other side, the NFC is looking quite interesting, especially the NFC West. What a division that is to watch. 3 teams at 5 and 5,
yeah.
and then the Cardinals leading the way at 6 and 4.
I mean, that is tight. It's a tight division.
Yeah. And I think the thing is with that, I think everybody's looking at it, and you kind of go, oh, well, the 49ers will get it together. But I'm not sure the 49ers are going to get it together. Like, we're 11, well, they played 10 games. We're 11 weeks in now. They should have got it together by now. McCaffrey's been back a couple of weeks, and their next 2 games are at the Packers and at the Bills. They could easily be 5 and 7.
Yeah, they could be in the mire over the next couple of weeks. Yeah, they just look so really disjointed, don't they? Like Deebo Samuel this week looked terrible. I know there was no George Kittle, and George Kittle's a huge part of the offense.
Yeah, it is.
Not just for the plays he makes, just for his character. And I think sometimes his personality gets the rest of the team up.
I've never been as upset about a tight end missing a game as I was with George Kittle missing that game. for those who listening who aren't involved in our league, I did a trade to bring George Kittle over because I was like, right, I need a tight end. So it's this time. I'm decided this year. I'm not gonna miss the playoffs or end up losing in the playoffs because I haven't made moves. So I've been trying to trade my way into having a bit more of an explosive team. And George Kittle was my next step, and I delayed it until Friday to see him back in training. He was back in training. I clicked go on the trade, gave James Cook up, and then on Sunday morning it breaks that he's not going to play. So I was like, wonderful.
So you're
Absolutely
trading
wonderful.
yourself out of the playoffs.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I was actually looking at that trade, and had I not done it, I think I would have lost this week, oddly enough, because of the other
Oh, right,
bits
okay.
involved in it.
Right,
So,
fair enough.
and it was one of those, I was going to ask your opinion on this actually. It was one of those where Sam, who I traded with, was like, yeah, we'll do it, but I want to swap Garrett Wilson for Devontae Adams. And I was like, I don't really want Devontae Adams. I quite like Garrett Wilson. Anyway, to get it done, I made that deal. And then Devontae Adams, and I was playing him, so Devontae Adams has outscored Garrett Wilson, and that's actually made all the difference when it's come down to it. So it's like, brilliant. I wouldn't have won without that.
Salt in the wound.
What
To be fair, like
we're
I
getting,
have a rule. I have a rule on trades, whereas I will not trade with someone who I'm playing against that week. Flat out won't do it
yeah.
for that
I've done it a
reason.
couple of times. I've done it a couple of times this year. It was one of those. I was like in the build up. I thought if I'm going to try and get Kittle off him, I might as well do it now, so I'm not facing him on Sunday. But it turns out I wouldn't have been facing him anyway. So it worked out. What's on that subject? And we're moving into fantasy early, but we've got a couple of minutes. But I just want to. There's a few things I wanted to talk to you about. What's more satisfying, doing a trade that then leads to you winning a game, or somebody rejecting a trade that then leads to you winning a game? Because both of those things happened to me this week. So I obviously did the trade and I won. Had somebody else accepted my other trade, they still would have won, but I would have lost.
I think it depends on why the trade was rejected. Like
Okay.
if you sent a cheeky one that you thought, you probably won't go through this one, and they've laughed at you and gone, not a chance, mate. But then if you sent them like a fairish trade, and you wanted to negotiate and they just flat out refused to talk to you, then that one.
Well, it was I offered CD Lamb for Nico Collins straight up.
Oh, I'd have taken that.
Yeah, but it was rejected.
I'd have given you Nico Collins for CD Lamb, definitely.
Well, it was rejected, and I was kind of expecting it to be rejected, but it was rejected. And then I was thinking about it before. I was like, actually, if it accepted that, I would have lost this week. So I'm happy it was rejected. I was like, that might have pleased me more than the trade I did. So yeah, it's a funny game, isn't it?
No.
One last thing on before we move on to quarter two and get a little bit more stuck into fantasy. One last thing that I've been meaning to talk to you about for a couple of weeks. And I know we have a lot of people who listen to this podcast who aren't like experts in the NFL. And for this particular thing, I'm going to throw myself into it. And I think you might be able to explain this to me. What is the point of the rule where you can't have an offensive lineman downfield on certain plays? Because I hate that. When the play's gone and the flags on, it's like ineligible man downfield, and I'm like, what is that all about?
Is this in reference to the Nico Collins touchdown?
No, this is just this is me jumping around now. No, this is something else I noticed when I was. I've made notes of things that annoyed me this weekend, and that was one of them. I was like, and it's annoyed me for a while. The play goes down, and I think it's one of those. As I understand the rule, they can go like, I think it's a lineman thing. They can go downfield if it's a run play, but as soon as it turns into a pass play, then they can't be more than like 5 yards downfield. And I'm like, I don't understand why there's a rule where people have to stand. What is that all about?
I actually don't know why that rule's in place, but I'm assuming it's because they're taking up space in the middle of the field where people are running routes. You got a big man downfield if people's running a crossing route or a slant or a drag route, all of a sudden there's a big 25-stone lineman in your way, taking up space that shouldn't be there. Plus, they're also occupying
But
linebackers that can go out
they
and
should
make
just let
tackles.
just let anybody go anywhere. Once after the snap, there's just a stupid rule. These are the
Yeah.
sort of things that stop people getting into the sport. Is my point. It's like if you don't understand it and it's not clear, just let anybody run anywhere. If all the linemen run off, then your quarterback's stuffed, isn't he? So it's like it's not of any benefit to the team with the ball.
Yeah, but if your linemen are 5 yards downfield, blocking a linebacker, it should be going out there to make a tackle then. It's an unfair advantage, isn't it, for the offensive team?
Yeah, I want that rule scrapped. That's all I'm
But yeah,
saying.
it's risk
That's
and reward. Like if you want to send all 5 linemen downfield and just leave your
Yeah,
quarterback in no pocket whatsoever,
I'm all for
which is
that.
basically what Joe Burrow's been against this year anyway. So might,
It's
might
a
as
bit.
well.
It's a bit. We need to move on, but it's a bit like the illegal formation. I'm like, let them line up in whatever formation they want, as long as they're all on the right side of the ball. I don't care. Like, just what benefit does it make having one person the other side and uncovered and the other? It's like, just let them all stand wherever they want. I've got no issue with that. Anyway, on to more important things. Fantasy football for you this week.
So what was that, mate?
Who did it for you this week?
Quite a few actually. My hating list is only 2 players this week,
Oh, okay.
which
Do you want to
is
mix it up and start with them?
the shortest it's ever been. How big's your hating list?
Mine's got 3 people on it, but 2 of them I've pulled into one bracket, so they're all part of the same problem.
Right. Okay. Well,
We
my
can,
first one's
we
Terry
can start with him.
McLaurin.
Terry McLaurin, yeah.
1 of 2
I
for
think
10
the
yards.
I think the Eagles D. I think the Eagles D is a lot better than people are really giving them credit for.
Yeah, it is. I mean, their corners are getting better throughout the year, and it was a tough matchup for him, but he's still top 8 as receivers. Just didn't have a good week this week, and
No,
I expected better. I
that was
expected
Thursday
more than
night
2
as well.
targets. Yeah.
That was Thursday night, and the frustrating thing about that was both leagues that I've got Barkley and I also had McLaurin in. So I sort of looked at it Friday morning and went, "Oh, I've got Barkley. Oh, I've got McLaurin." I
Oh,
kind of balanced itself out a little bit, but it's still an advantage overall. But it wasn't the advantage I was hoping it was going to be.
no.
I'm going for. I've written down in terms of negatives. I've written down Mike Gesicki in the same, and I've bracketed with Tucker Craft in the. I was scrambling around as already discussed. Traded for Kittle. I also had McBride in a few leagues, so I was scrambling for tight ends this week, and they were the 2 that I took a punt on, and they combined for 0 catches, for 0 yards, for 0 points, and I was just like, how has that happened? How has Gesicki gone from both of them? How did they go from 1 week being a really important part of the offense to just getting very little targets and no catches?
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, obviously, I watched the game, and I just watched Tanner Hudson get target after target after target, followed by drop after drop after drop. I was like, why are we
Yeah.
targeting our blocking tight end and Gesicki's doing nothing? There was one play where Gesicki was blocking for Tanner Hudson. I'm like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
It's like they've come up with
The
this like, oh,
frustrating
they'll never see this. They'll never see this coming. Yeah, there's a reason they'll never see it coming.
The frustrating thing is, 4 days ago, they both seemed like better picks than Jonnu Smith and Will Dissly, and who were other people that I considered but didn't seem like the right picks. And both of those scored a touchdown. Jonnu Smith had a big game. Yeah, really frustrating.
Well, Jonnu Smith from that game has put himself as tight end 7 for the season now. He has jumped into the
That's
top 10
nuts. Yeah.
massively. And he had
He's
a
helping
huge
me
game,
in.
didn't he?
Yeah, he's helping me in one best ball that I'm still involved in. One best ball
Yeah,
charity tournament that we'll get onto next week.
yeah.
So who was your other one for negatives?
Well, the other one is the tight end myself. We're back on Kyle Pitts, aren't we? Kyle Pitts doing Kyle Pitts things.
It's not going to happen for him.
He just finds a way of making us believe. And then when it really matters, just pulling our pants down. 1 of 3 for 9 yards. I mean, the Falcons weren't great.
No, they weren't. Broncos completely tore them apart and shut them down.
Yeah.
Well, he is like Kyle Pitts to me is like a rich man's Isaiah Likely. It's exactly the same thing. It's like they're more than capable of going out there and having a good game, but they're also more than capable of having like 2 targets, 1 catch, 4 yards, and you just go, "What? Where's the massive plays?" It's like they're basically the same player, just on different offenses. Kyle Pitts is not going to be the world beater that everybody thought he was going to be coming out of college.
No, and I think next year when it comes to doing drafts, I'm going to have to constantly remind myself, don't touch him.
Yeah.
Do not touch him. I don't care what round it's in. I'm not having him at all next year.
Yeah, because the same thing will happen. He'll get to it'll drop to 10th, 11th, 12th round, and everybody will be like, everyone's got a tight end. It's like, oh, I can take Kyle Pitts as my second tight end. What a pick that is. And it's just a waste, isn't it? Because you don't know when you're going to get the points.
Yeah.
Very quickly, my other one, and this is the second week on the trot, but I made a point on this podcast last week of saying I was done with Young Wei Koo. And in about 5 leagues that I got rid of Young Wei Koo, I replaced him with Jake Elliott, who then went field goals, including one that was ridiculous, and missed an extra point. And I was just like, what's happened to Jake Elliott? What is this like this kicker curse that I'm putting on people? So yeah, Jake Elliott, come on, man.
I mean, it's kickers everywhere. I mean, other than Chris Boswell. We discussed this last week, didn't we? But there's so many kicks being missed this season.
This was the first time, and you did not see this coming. This is the first time that I saw the Ravens come out, or somebody related to the Ravens came out and went, "We're not considering a change at kicker," because Justin Tucker missed a couple, which I got a couple early on against the Steelers, and I was just like, "Ooh." That has got bad over there but he's missed something like 6 or 7 on the season now, and
he's missing extra points as well.
Yeah, I do think he could end up costing him in the playoffs when it gets there, like because this seems to be blowing.
There isn't a single part of me that's sad about that situation. I'll be honest.
No, I know. No, I know.
Like Justin Tucker, I get if you're a Ravens fan, you'll love Justin Tucker. Anyone who follows the other 31 teams thinks Justin Tucker is an absolute bell.
Yeah, fair enough. Right, on more positive note, who ripped it up for you? Who do we want to give some credit to?
Well, we're obviously going to say Saquon, aren't we? We both got Saquon. 146 yards, 2 touchdowns, 33.8 points in PPR. Absolutely unreal week.
Yeah. He was. I mean, we've talked about him before. I think he's become him and Derrick Henry leading the rushing. I read somewhere he's on for 2,000 rushing yards. Barkley, and they are, when you watch them, it's a bit like the Ravens. Like, he is their offense now. Like, he leads. We run the ball first. I mean, Jalen Hurts is still stealing 1-yard touchdowns away from him, which on any other offense with any other quarterback he'd be getting. But he's still doing enough. Like, he is their offense, and then they go off that to AJ Brown, and they go off that to Goddard and Devonta Smith. But he leads. If they can run the ball, that's what they want to do.
Well, I'm glad you made that point, because I looked into this yesterday when I was prepping. And the Eagles are pretty much a one-man team. So the Eagles' offense, minus Jalen Hurts on the ground, their entire offense has got 2,250 yards and 10 touchdowns. Saquon alone has got 1,347 and 10 touchdowns. So Saquon's got just as many touchdowns as the rest of the offense, with a 903-yard difference. So Saquon alone counts for almost 38% of the Eagles' total yardage and 50% of the touchdowns.
Yeah.
So if you add Jalen Hurts into it, Jalen Hurts has got 417 yards and 11 touchdowns. but 8 of those have been from inside the 5. So whose touchdowns are those really? So Saquon could have 8 touchdowns more.
Yeah. I think there is an element of the offense doesn't work as well without having a rushing quarterback because they've got to keep it's opening up for him because they've got to keep their eye on Hurts running at the same time. But he's finally. I'm quite pleased for Saquon Barkley because he's finally being given it's a bit like we touched on it last week. It's the same with CMC in San Francisco. He's been given the environment to go and do what he can do.
Yeah,
I mean, he's always been.
Yeah,
He was the Giants off. He was the entirety of the Giants offense. They just didn't have one, so they didn't have a team. So yeah, fair play. I've gone a bit left field in mine this week because there was so many big performances. It'd be obvious to mention a Barkley or an Amon-Ra St. Brown or someone like that. But Jameis Winston, what a game!
Yeah.
As many people, as everybody who listens to this pod will know, I have far too many shares of Kyler Murray in various different leagues. So I was scrambling around in various different leagues trying to find quarterbacks this week. And because Murray was on a bye, I went with Herbert in a couple of leagues, and he's looking strong and played really well. But Jameis Winston, 395 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a 2-point conversion. What a day! Didn't throw an interception. The amount of throwing the ball downfield he does without get thrown an interception is impressive.
Yeah, it was a good game for him. Not for the rest of the Browns, but it was a good game for him personally.
Yeah, it worries me a bit. Yeah. I'm going to have to play him in a couple of leagues this week because I didn't realize how many of my players are on bye. And
I know, but it is the Steelers this week, though.
Yeah, that worries me. But I mean, the thing is, I've got no problem with him throwing interceptions because it means he's going to have to then keep throwing it because they'll be coming from behind. So I think if he goes for 250, 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, it's still going to be a good week, isn't it? So especially if you're in, especially those leagues where it's 6 points for a throwing for a touchdown. So yeah, I'm all in for Jameis Winston as part of my various mix of teams for the rest of the year.
Oh, good. So I'm going to go back to running backs, and I'm going to talk about future Hall of Famer Joe Mixon, who was RB1 on the week with 109 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 of 4 for 44 yards. Now, the reason I want to mention Joe Mixon is that, and I've done the maths on this, if he didn't miss the 3 games that he's missed this season, he'd be RB1 ahead of Derrick Henry and Kamara.
He's been good.
He's averaging 22.5 points per game, which is a full 2 points per game higher than Derrick Henry.
Okay. That's impressive. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
You're coming out with some prep in this week. You're coming out with some stats, man.
I have put some prep in, yeah. So he's 2 points per game higher than Derrick Henry, 0.5 point higher than Saquon. And Kamara and Bijan Robinson haven't got an average of 20 plus. So he's absolutely smashing it. And if he didn't miss those 3 games, you're probably looking at RB1 for the year.
Yeah. He's always put up the numbers, though, hasn't he? He did it at the Bengals year after year. Every year he came into it, and everyone tried to tell you he wasn't good enough. And then he put up the numbers again. So fair play to him.
Yeah.
I've picked another one from the same Saints game. I feel like Taysom Hill needs a mention. And this was really partly so I could bring up Scott Fishbowl because I know you've made the playoffs. So it was the last week of the last week of the regular season. I haven't. I've missed out. You needed 13 wins or to be in the top half of the scoring. I got to 12 wins, which was frustrating. And I needed a big win. I needed a big score this week, and I gambled on a few players, including Taysom Hill, who, because of the scoring format, got me 63 points because he got 138 yards on the ground, 3 touchdowns, and was also 8 of 10 receptions for 50 yards, together with throwing the ball as well. It was like he literally does everything. I needed about 265 points. I ended up with 230, so I was still 30 points short of making the playoffs, but. Taysom Hill, if I'd have picked him in my other leagues instead of Gesicki and took a craft, I would have been flying. So yeah, a big week for him. I know he's always a massive gamble one way or another, but I needed it. And whilst I have missed the playoffs in Scotfish, it was an enjoyable experience. And I know we both had fun when we did the draft. You're still involved, so we'll keep an eye on that and update people as we go in terms of how you dominate through the playoffs and then eventually win the whole thing.
Oh, no, I'll be done next week.
Yeah, but
I'm
yeah,
done
that
next
was a good experience for us. It was a pleasure to be invited down to that, and hopefully we can we talk to the right people and stay on the right side of people. We can get invited down next year to get involved in SFB 15. Right, fantasy game day. Explain to me how we didn't win any money in fantasy game day.
I was thinking that myself, and the only reason I can come up with is your captain didn't do it.
Right, I thought it might be my fault.
Yeah, so your captain last week was Christian McCaffrey with double points, scored 29.2 with 79 yards on the ground, 4 catches for 27 yards, so just over 100 total scrimmage yards. So the rest of our team was Jordan Love, who got 20.2, which is okay. Karen, 8.6, bit of a letdown there.
That might be where we lost it.
Yeah, A-Chan, 20.5. Jerry Judy, 26.2. Valdez Scantling, 16.7. David Montgomery, 24.5. And then Dawson Knox got a respectable 8 for a tight end. And you'll take 8 from your tight end.
Yeah.
And overall, we finished 53rd out of 233, which left us, we only needed 3 points. We were 3 points shy of the money.
That is pretty annoying.
Yeah. It's annoying and a bit disappointing. So, yeah, probably put the player at Karen Williams' door there.
Were we leading the way at one point?
Yeah, we were. We were top 3, weren't we, to begin with? Because when
Jerry
Judy scored, then Valdez Scantling scored, then HA went in, Montgomery went in. I'm like, right, it's on here.
Yeah.
It's on. We were top for a little while. I think
the problem is you look down that total and you go, they're all good scores, but there was a lot of good scoring this week, as we will get onto in the charity leagues in a minute. But there was a lot of good scoring, so that was unfortunate.
Yeah. The good news
this
is,
week,
for me anyway, me on Fantasy Game Day, I had a personal win. So I stuck £3 in the Sunday game, and I finished 3rd out of 420 to win 51 quid.
Work. Nice.
So that was a good personal win for me. Couldn't do it for the pod, but I did it for myself.
We might need you to transfer some of that money to the pod account, because if we keep getting it wrong, we're going to run out of money pretty quickly. I have to get onto Fantasy Game Day and go, can we have some more free plays, please? Because we're not very good at this. Speaking of which, if you haven't already signed up and you want a free play, use our code at JMDFS and you will get a free play. And if you have, as I discussed last week, if you've already used your code, get one of your friends or family to use our code and get a free play that way. Right, the JMD JTT Dynasty League. What a week! Some scores this week. Right, we'll start with
not by
Brady
me.
League. We'll start. Just be glad you weren't on the end of some of these scores. We'll start with the Brady week. In fact, I'm gonna set this up. 1, 2, 3. We had in the first 10 weeks of this season, we've had 9 scores over 200 points. So just want you to bear that in mind as I go through some of these scores. So in the Brady division, the top scorer, Never Dull Hull, 213.18, which was just ahead of Yeovil Town 49ers, who had 210.9. So it was two massive scores there. Never Dull Hull taking charge of that division at 7-4, but that's H's division. It's still as tight as it gets. I think there's only basically everybody's still in the playoff run and well in the playoff run with 3 weeks left. So that's huge. Renich's Speed was the lowest scorer with 127.28. H lost this week, I think, as well, so he's not confirmed his playoff place. Or, in fact, nobody's confirmed their playoff place in that division. In the Elway division, we were going to try and get Millionaire Matt on this week, which would have been a good week to get him on because he got his second win of the season. So he's off.
He might be out celebrating.
He's now officially not the lowest ranked team across all 4 divisions. So he's up to 2-9. So well done to him. In that division, we had scores of 217.88 from Team DS Liddy and 206 from Team 89 Monday. So that's 2 in the Brady division and 2 in the Elway division with 200 plus. Pestle managed 115. So in that division, we have 2 teams at 8 and 3, 3 teams at 7 and 4. So even the teams at 8 and 3 not confirmed a playoff place because it's basically a 5-way fight for 4 places with 3 weeks to go. So anything can happen in that league. Although a couple of them have confirmed their place in the Champions League, which starts in 2 weeks' time. So which I'll talk about in a minute. In your division, mate, the Merino League, Dynasty Cowboys with 206.62. It's another 200-point score to get to 9 and 2. Team Dynasty Ireland also at 9 and 2, scored 185. Further down there, we've got Sherlock Mahomes at 6 and 5. And the lowest scoring team this week was Team MKC Papa, 131.26. That's the 4th time this year in 11 weeks that they put up the lowest score. So not the most consistent. They have put some good scores in there as well. Finally, the Manning division, we had a score by Can't Buy a Win of 211.12. But there's a reason I've left this division till last, because Team Scuba Lee, our mate Scuba Lee from SFB last year, scored 240.04.
What?
That is. So congratulations. That is absolutely
That is unreal.
The record for the weekly score. So I've got his team here. Matthew Stafford, 27. Achan, 20. CMC, 14. Cooper Kupp, 28. Amon-Ra, 38. Devonta Smith, just short of 7. Jonnu Smith, 28. T. Higgins, 29. Joe Burrow, 29. L. McPherson, 9. And the 49ers defense, 7. 240 points.
Wow.
What a week that is.
Unreal.
Yeah. And do you know what it gets into? 4 and 7. So it's not really.
Yeah.
It's not
same as me. I'm 4 and 7.
Yeah, the playoffs aren't over, but 4 and 7, not looking great.
No.
So in that league, we did also have the first defeat for the last waltz. So our final undefeated team has now been defeated. So everyone's got a loss on there. So 10 and 1 still leads the way at 10 and 1. And Team Hungry Pablo joined a couple of other teams at 9 and 2. So that division, I lost on Monday night. Should be 8 and 3, but somebody didn't do it. Stroud didn't do it for me on Monday night. It's apparently just handing the ball to Joe Mixon's enough nowadays. So
yeah, he's not fantasy viable, is he, Stroud, at the minute?
He's I don't know, but not if they're going to get. They're a bit like the Eagles. If you're going to get the ball, and the Eagles are different because Jalen Hurts also runs the ball. But if you can get a bit like the Lions, if you can get the game won by running the ball, feels like the Texans are just going to not do any more than they need to, which in the long run for them as a team might be the right way to go. So that's how it looks with 3 weeks to go in terms of the individual divisions. But next week is the final week to try and qualify for the Champions League version, our Dynasty Champions League. And we have 11 teams who are 7. So there's 14 teams qualified. Top 2 will go through will have a bye in round 1. Everyone else will play as the standard NFL playoffs does through weeks 13 to 16. If you are 8 and 3 or better, you have officially confirmed your place in our Champions League. So I will quickly run through that. The last waltz, Team Hungry Pablo, Dynasty Cowboys, Team Dynasty Ireland, Team DS Liddy and 89 Monday, you are all confirmed. If you are at 7 and 4, you are on the brink. So a win this week will confirm you. If you don't win, then it'll go into a points thing probably. So that's where we're looking at. It's looking like 7 and 4/8 and 3 is the core. So if you're on 6 and 5, you need a win this week to give yourself any chance. And next week we will confirm how that's looking. If I get chance this week, I'll do a bit of a this is the people in the hunt and this is how you're looking and everything else and share that on the groups. But for the time being, that gives everybody a bit of an idea. And then we'll put a bracket together and we'll highlight that next week so everyone knows the situation going into week 13. And I haven't sorted a trophy, but that will be for the big Dynasty trophy. And when I say big, it'll be a little trophy, but it'll be a big prize in terms of pride. And some sort of manly chocolate treat.
Okay. Will there be like a conference league for the people that are like 4 and 7?
No.
Asking for myself.
Asking for a friend. Asking for H.
Yeah.
But no, there won't be. Right, that's that. That's that summary. We've got 5 minutes to go through waivers.
Yeah.
Who are you
Have you
looking
got
at?
any?
Yeah. Well, I've just made I haven't really made any decisions yet, but I've made a list of terms of I think people who are looking for quarterbacks. If Bo Nix is available, Bo Nix is definitely worth picking up. He's currently QB7 on the year. They've not had the bye,
6.
which 6 now. They've not had the bye, which goes against him a little bit. But he, when you look back on the numbers, especially the last few weeks, he looked good on Sunday. So he's on my list. And I've also, as a sort of secondary, I've put Matt Stafford, who I know he had a big week and he's not always going to have a big week. But as we talked about earlier, they're 5 and 5. He's now got his weapons back. They are going to have to keep slinging it around to try and win those games. So I think if you're desperate for a quarterback, he could be a good shout.
Oh yeah, that's 2 good ones there. So I've got Lad McConkey.
He was on my list of wide receivers. Yeah.
Yeah, had his highest targets of the season against us. He had 9 targets, which he turned into 6 catches for 123 yards. Coming into a game against the Ravens, who we all know are terrible at defending the pass, averaging 305 yards a game. And that's even after keeping the Steelers to 205. And, the Chargers might need to try and keep up with the Ravens as well.
Yeah.
So for that reason, Quentin Johnston is also a shout.
I was going to say, I noticed Quentin Johnston's still available in some of our leagues. Would you rather have Johnston or McConkey?
I think I would rather go with the volume guy.
McConkey.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a game where you forecast it to be tight and you just want to play it safe and hope that you squeak a win, then McConkey's your guy. But if you're at the point where you're 4 and 7, you're swinging for the fences, roll the dice for Quentin Johnston.
Yeah, I was looking at both of them, and I'm going to be honest. I don't know why I do this, but one of the reasons I quite like the look of them this week is 1, they're playing the Ravens, and 2, it's on Monday night. I quite like having somebody still to play on Monday night, which is a ridiculous way to play fantasy football. But when your team's all played and you're waiting for your opponent to finish, it's like I'd rather go into Monday night going, right, I've got McConkey and he's got, I don't know, Flowers or whatever, and it's like a 1-on-1, as opposed to just hoping that Flowers doesn't score 20 points or whatever you need. So I realise how pathetic that is, and probably one of the reasons I don't win because I'm just picking teams who have played in prime time, picking players who have played in prime time. But yeah, I'd made a.
Go on.
Cool. No, go on, mate.
Go on. I've got a couple more.
I was going to say, McConkey was on my list and Quentin Johnston. I'd made a list of wide receivers. I think we mentioned Marcus Valdes-Scantling last week, and then he's done it again this week. The volume would worry me a little bit with him. It's a bit long, as he always is. It's a bit long touchdown dependent. I did hear something brilliant on one podcast this week, was like, actually, maybe he's just found his level in terms of quarterback, because he couldn't do it with Aaron Rodgers, couldn't do it with Josh Allen. He couldn't do it with Mahomes. Maybe Derek Carr and him are just on the same sort of level, and that's all he needed all along. He's on my
They're both
list. Jerry
mediocre.
Jeudy, yeah, Jerry Judy's on my list. He's had some good targets the last few weeks. Josh Downs, and then I put two Colts on there. Josh Downs and Mitchell, Adonai Mitchell, both had okay games on Sunday, and this could just be a one-off, but for the first time, Anthony Richardson completed some passes. So I think he was 67, 68% completion rate, which I think is the first time he's been over 50%. So it wasn't just that he came back in and we won and he looked a little bit better. I mean, Josh Downs made an absolutely amazing catch on one of them because he just completely
Oh
overthrew
yeah,
him. But
yeah.
but at the same time, he is starting to connect. And Mitchell's an interesting one because we're starting to use him and try and get him more involved in the offense. So I was like, he could be down the stretch. He could be somebody that they lean on a little bit more. And I think both of those are potential because Michael Pittman seems to be, he's clearly injured and carrying an injury, and they should just stick him on IR because we're not making the playoffs. So just get him healthy for next year and use your younger and including your rookie wide receiver and see what they can do.
Yeah, fair enough then. Well, I'm going the opposite end of that spectrum, and I'm going with an old man, and it's Adam Thielen. He's due back this week in a game against the Chiefs. Yeah,
No.
But this is the reason I'm going with this is because this isn't a game for Chuba Hubbard or Jonathan Brooks if he's going to make his debut, because the Chiefs have got the third best run defense in the league. So it's likely that Thielen, Leggett, and Sanders are picking up some extra targets. So with that in mind, if you are missing out on a tight end this week, you've got Gesicki, Kincaid, Pitts, Engram. Sanders is a decent streaming option. So there's two. And then my last one is also a tight end, and it's Luke Shoemaker. Jake Ferguson's in concussion. Shoemaker got 10 targets this week, coming into a game against a Pats-friendly D in Washington. So, if you get 10 targets for your tight end, get him in.
I can't believe you just mentioned Adam Thielen. It's November 2024.
I know.
Surely not.
It's actually nice to say his name without H saying that stupid saying that he always says whenever someone says his name.
That brings us on to selection nightmares, and I've got a couple of running backs this week, and mine's actually going back. Mine's actually in the JMD JTT Manning division. I've got a problem at running back. Well, it's not a problem. I just need a decision. It's J.K. Dobbins, who's obviously just come off a good game, and he's playing the Ravens, whose pass defense isn't great, but they don't give up much on the ground. Or Jonathan Taylor against the Lions, who've got a very good defense all around, and didn't have a great game on Sunday because it feels like Anthony Richardson's going to just, give him the ball. Don't run it in yourself. Give it to Taylor. That's kind of his job. So neither of them, whilst they both sound like decent players and decent plays, neither of them are exciting me, and I don't know what to do about it.
See, I think I'm going to go with the experience of Jonathan Taylor. Definitely. Against the Lions, that could be a high score. You're going to need him. And it may be that you're coming up with schemes where you can get him the ball outside the tackles, you're going to throw some swings, get him motioning out wide and getting the ball in his hands out wide. Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense. I think he's the better player. It just worries me, and maybe this is why we have these discussions. Maybe this is me with my Colts head on, just assuming we're going to get absolutely destroyed, and therefore he's going to be played out of the game plan a little bit, and then we are going to, we're just going to sit everybody for the fourth quarter because Flacco's going to come back in with Trey Sermon or whatever, and we're just going to let everybody else sit for the fourth quarter because the game will already be over. But Steichen does, to be fair to him, I don't agree with everything he does, but he does do a good job of keeping us in game sometimes. So who knows? Who's yours?
Yeah, I don't think there's any way you can keep him. You can't keep him with a chance in that game without using Jonathan Taylor.
Mm,
If you're
I
going to try
agree
and
with
keep
that.
up with the Lions purely based off Anthony Richardson passing the ball, it ain't going to work.
Yeah. Oh no, I agree with that 100%.
So yes, I'm missing Kamara and Chase Brown in our main dynasty league, which leaves me with DeAndre Swift, who is locked in to one of my running back spots, and I need to fill the gap with either Bucky Irving at the Giants or Nick Chubb versus the Steelers.
Oh,
So it's a lead back with Chubb versus a committee back with Irving.
I don't. Oh God, that's a tough choice. Nick Chubb hasn't looked like he's got it back yet, which is completely understandable. If he's going, I mean, I've said all along, I don't think he's going to get. I don't think he's going to come back and look the same like the same player. But even if he does, if I'm wrong, it wasn't going to happen straight away. It was going to take half a year. It might not even happen until next year. But I don't think the way that they beat. I don't think the way they beat the Steelers is by giving it to Nick Chubb. So I know Bucky Irving's in a committee, but he's the more explosive, exciting runner of the two. Who they're playing again? Giants.
Away at the Giants.
Yeah, I think I'd go Bucky Irving. It's a tough
Bucky
one, but I
Irving
think
away
I'd
at the
lean
Giants.
Bucky Irving.
Okay, fair enough.
That's what I've noticed this week, because I know you're a big believer in looking at bye weeks when we're doing drafts, and I think obviously when you're doing in redraft or in best ball, you can do that. But what I've noticed when I go down my dynasty leagues is I haven't taken that into account at all, because you just sort of you go from one year to the next looking at players, and it doesn't. I can't trade people away because they're on the same bye week as somebody else just because I need them for next year, and etc. etc. So there is, when I look down on where I've got problems, my biggest issues are in my dynasty leagues this week, right? And it's just I
Yeah,
haven't paid any attention to it, and now I'm looking at it going, that's a problem.
yeah. I mean, this wouldn't have been a problem had I have not traded away James Conner earlier in the season. But when I was looking
Yeah.
at that trade and looking at bye weeks, I thought by now Nick Chubb will be back to what he was, and he isn't. He's not there yet. So I'm in a bit of a pickle.
Yeah. You never know, though. I mean, it's
No.
bad enough that DeAndre Swift is your lead back going into a week, so I would go with Bucky Irving because you might need the ceiling that he brings. Like DeAndre Swift is he's up and down to say the least, isn't he?
Yeah, but
Very up
then
and down.
the Bucks might not need to do much to beat Danny DeVito at the Giants.
No, we'll see. I cannot believe, and I'll put it on our WhatsApp group yesterday. I cannot believe that like the main game of Thanksgiving is now Cooper Rush against Tommy DeVito. It feels like it happens every year. And I don't know whether, and I'm assuming like in America they make a big deal out of it because it's Thanksgiving, but for us over here, it's one of the few times where it's like, oh, actually I can watch a game or a couple of games that aren't like they're on an island. There's no other games going on, and they're not in the middle of the night. And I feel like I notice the Thanksgiving games a little bit more, and I feel like every year one of them is ruined by quarterback injuries.
Yeah,
And this year it's
just
the
while
Cowboys
we're
one.
on the Giants, like for most of the best ball teams that I've drafted earlier in the season, when we get into the later rounds and looking at quarterbacks, I was looking at the Giants and I thought, there's no way Dan Jones is playing the full season. So I picked up a ton of Drew Lock.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why? What's going on with Drew Lock? Playing.
And I was like, there's no way that Drew Lock isn't better than Tommy DeVito. There's just no way.
Yeah.
That feels like maybe they're going, well, if we're going to change and go, it's no surprise that they've gone away from Daniel Jones because I believe his contract He's got one of those contracts where if he gets hurt and can't pass a medical, they owe him like 20 million next year. It's like the Russell
Yeah,
Wilson deal
23.
from a couple of years.
It's 23 million
So
if he gets injured.
yeah. So they were always going to drop him, but we're all going, it's going to be Drew Lock, and it's almost as if they've gone, well, we'd quite like the number 1 overall pick, so we're gonna put this
Yeah.
Danny DeVito guy in.
Yeah, I saw someone break it down. Apparently, well, in their opinion, the reason it's not Drew Lock is that if they start using Drew Lock, they have to pay him more money. Drew Lock's got guarantees built into his contract based on, game time and win bonuses and things like that. So they just like Drew Lock is the better quarterback. They just don't want to pay him.
It just made me laugh every year that we go into the season at the start of September and every team has got some level of hope. And by the end of November, we're already talking about 6 or 7 teams who have basically just given up and have no hopes whatsoever. Mixed in with the fact that there's probably only 5 teams, and there's no one outside of the 2 teams. There's no one outside of the Eagles, Lions, Bills, Chiefs, and Ravens that I would be putting money on for the Super Bowl. What if the Super Bowl doesn't come from one of those 5 teams? I'll be shocked.
Yeah,
and we've still got 7 weeks of the regular season to play out, and then a couple of rounds of playoffs to play out, where the rest of these teams are just going to get knocked out, and it feels inevitable that the Lions Eagles, or at least one of the Lions Eagles is going to be in the championship game, and then on the other side, the championship game is going to be either Ravens Chiefs or Chiefs Bills or Bills Ravens. It's like, it just feels like it's inevitable that that's going to happen. And I can already hear all the Steelers fans screaming at me, going, "We're 8-3, 8-2, or whatever. Don't forget about us." But you lost to the Colts, so just remember that. That's how good you are. Right. We didn't win any money this week.
I know. Bengals let us down again.
Bengals let us down. The worst part about that is that I forgot to put the money on. So then, out of my own pocket, I made that up by putting a bigger bet on Sunday.
Oh no!
Because I was like, to make sure we won the money that we should have won for the charity. So in fact, we just lost more money than we should have lost. So
fantastic
there you go.
Work.
Chase your winning, chase your losses. This week, Thursday night football is Steelers at Browns. I'm luckily going away first thing Friday morning, so I won't be staying up to watch Steelers at Browns. But potentially, if Jameis Winston starts throwing it in the right direction, could be a decent game.
I mean, it won't be a decent game. It's
I have
got a point to make on this, to be honest. Go on.
Go on then, go for it.
Again, I've done the research. The Steelers are a better team with Fields than they are with Russell Wilson. But only marginally. So in 5 games with Ross, the Steelers have managed 6 passing touchdowns, 3 rushing touchdowns. In 6 games with Fields, they scored 5 passing touchdowns and 6 rushing touchdowns. So with Ross, they're averaging 1.8 touchdowns a game. Whereas with Fields, they're averaging 1.83. So it is only marginal, but it highlights that, this Russell Wilson saving the Steelers experiment, it's not as successful as people are thinking. So with that in mind, the Steelers have got one of the most boring offenses in the NFL. And they are proving right now that you only need a quality D and a good kicker to win games. But at least when they play Fields, they've got the excitement of a dual threat quarterback.
They are really, really, really well coached. They're really well coached. Yeah. They've got a really good defense. And as I've said time and time again, that'll work in the regular season. And I mean, obviously, we were sort of saying they'll get to 9-8, they'll get to 10-7. Now it feels like they're going to get further than that. I mean, they could be at 9 wins if they win this week. So, they're gonna go into the playoffs. But even as well as they've done, if you look at the current standings, where they put like the playoffs as it is now, it's like they'd have to host the Ravens on Wild Card weekend, and they won't be favourites going into that game. because the Ravens would everyone would still expect the Ravens to beat them.
Well, the Steelers have beat the Ravens 8 out of 9 times.
Yeah.
So I don't get
but
what's the point.
No, but maybe I'll be wrong, but we'll see. I think that they are well coached. I think all that stat tells me is that they don't score a lot of touchdowns. 1.8 in passing and rushing combined is just not exciting enough. And I think that won't work. That won't work in the playoffs because yes, they beat the Ravens at the weekend, but all it would have taken is one of those Justin Tucker field goals to go through early on that he missed, and suddenly it's a different game. And I think sooner or later they'll come up against a team in the playoffs, and we'll see. We'll see anyway. But who are you going for this week? Because I can see the Browns winning this game.
Well, I'm going to go with the Steelers.
Okay.
Because
we'll
if
go
you
with
shut down
Steelers.
Lamar and Derrick Henry, I think they'll be able to handle Jameis and Nick Chubb.
Yeah. We'll go with the Steelers, but because this is a divisional game that they're kind of expected to win, and it's at the Browns on a Thursday night, this is the kind of game I can see the Browns winning.
Well, why don't you go with Browns and we'll let H pick a decider?
Yeah, okay. Because he'll pick the Steelers. But all right, we'll speak to H, and we'll put all of this on social later in the week anyway. We'll speak to H. Sunday night, the games at the end of the weekend sound really good. Sunday night, Eagles at Rams.
I'm going Eagles.
Yeah, I think they look a little bit too good at the moment. I think the Rams are good, but I think they're good to us. Again, they're very well coached, good quarterback. The defense is young and learning, but I don't think they'll have enough to handle the Eagles. I think Jalen Hurts will have to do more than he had to do last week, and I think the wide receivers will be needed a little bit more. But I can't see the Rams sticking with the Eagles. I think the Eagles win that. And then finally, Monday night should be really interesting as well. Ravens at Chargers.
And I'm taking the Ravens.
I think the Chargers win that game. So that's another one we need.
Well, I hope you're right.
I just think they're looking really good, the Chargers. And I think Justin Herbert is starting to look. And part of me, we miss H every time he's not on this on the pod. But I feel like we'd either be going on for an hour and a half because he'd really want to talk about how great Justin Herbert was, or the whole pod would have just been about Justin Herbert. He could have brought him up at various different points in every sort of quarter we've had. So in some ways, it's a good job he's not here because he would have just talked about Justin Herbert a lot. But he'd have a point because he is playing really well. And I know he had that really good sort of rookie season and then into his second season, but this is as good as Justin Herbert's looked, I think, personally, from what I've seen. And it just feels like they've got the right. They're not making him put it on his back anymore. They're trying to get the run game going. They are getting the run game going. But then some of those throws on Sunday night were an absolute joy to watch.
Yeah, they were.
And I think we've already talked about the Ravens' defense not really being as good as it should be through the air, and I could see him carving them up. The question is, can all of those waiver wire ads we just talked about in terms of Quentin Johnston and Ladd McConkey catch the ball enough to keep them in the game and make it worthwhile? Right.
Yeah,
well that's Kate.
They're not Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, are they? But they're doing the job.
No. We'll ask Kate about those two. Anything to add before we wrap up?
No, I'm good, mate. Cheers.
Feeling confident with 3 weeks of the regular season left in the fantasy world?
Depends what league you're talking to me about.
Generally,
in our second dynasty league, I think I've got that nailed on. But yeah,
already the playoffs. I've never seen anything like it.
I reckon if I had to put a number on it, I reckon I probably got about 65% of my teams are playoff bound.
Yeah, that's not bad.
To put a number on it. So yeah,
I would say about
I'm having an all right season.
80% of mine are on the wire. So it's like in 3 weeks' time, you're either going to see a really happy version of me or a really sad version of me. So yeah, and it starts this week. It's funny, like you said, it doesn't seem to matter in weeks 5 and 6, but suddenly this week feels really, really important. So get wins in
Yeah.
the right leagues this week, and suddenly you're right on the edge, aren't you? So, right. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. As always, we appreciate the support. Share and pass. Tell your mates about it if you can. We would like to continue growing this, but we do appreciate the support we've had to this point. So, thank you very much, and we'll see you next week.